The music box sat on my nightstand for 3 hours before I could bring myself to wind it. 10 years of silence, dust gathering on its mother-of-pearl inlay until nights like this when memory gnawed harder than reason. I'd inherited it the day they buried her. Meredith Walker, antiquarian and scholar. Dead at 36 in what the coroner called sudden cardiac arrest. No history of heart disease. No warning signs. Case closed before I'd finished sorting through her books. I turned the key with trembling fingers. Debussy's Clair de Lune filled my apartment, the same melody she'd played every night before bed. But I hadn't wound it. Not tonight. Not for the past week when it had started playing by itself at exactly 3:33 a.m., pulling me from sleep with my heart racing and blood on my pillow. The nosebleeds had started 10 nights ago. Then the photographs where my reflection appeared blurred like I was vibrating at a frequency cameras couldn't capture. Yesterday I'd caught my reflection in the bookshop window and didn't recognize the sharpness of my own canine teeth. Something inside me was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for 26 years. I ran my tongue over my teeth again. Still sharp. Sharp enough that I'd drawn blood from my own lip that morning and found myself frozen by the bathroom sink, staring at the crimson droplet with an hunger that terrified me. I'd worked with occult manuscripts for 5 years, treating vampirism as mythology, folklore to be catalogued and studied with academic detachment. The irony wasn't lost on me now. My phone lit up on the table. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. The message was written in an image file, elegant calligraphy on crimson parchment. Your mother's grave. Midnight. The truth she died protecting can no longer stay buried. Come alone, Ygraine Lohengrin. My hands shook as I read it twice. 3 times. The surname hit like ice water. Lohengrin. Not Walker. A name I'd never carried, never even heard spoken aloud. But something in my blood recognized it. Sang to it. I texted back, "Who is this?" No response. Just that single message glowing accusingly from my screen, the crimson parchment seeming to pulse with each heartbeat. Sutton would tell me I was insane. My only real friend at the university had spent years watching me bury myself in work, keeping everyone at arm's length. She'd asked once why I never dated, never let anyone close. I told her I was married to my research. The truth was simpler and more pathetic. I was terrified of losing anyone else the way I'd lost my mother. But Sutton didn't know what I'd found in my mother's journals last month. Didn't know about the entries that stopped making sense in those final weeks. References to the Sanguine Court, and ancient oaths, written in handwriting that grew increasingly frantic. Phrases in languages I couldn't identify, though I'd studied dead languages for years. One entry, dated 3 days before she died. If they find out what Ygraine is, if they discover Uriel's blood runs in her veins, the Sanguine Order will never stop hunting her. I've kept her hidden for 26 years. I can keep her hidden forever. Even from him. Especially from him. I'd convinced myself it was fiction. Some novel she'd been writing. My mother had always been eccentric, obsessed with vampire mythology to the point where colleagues had gently suggested she was too emotionally invested in her research. But my teeth were sharp. My reflection was wrong. And I'd woken up craving something I didn't want to name. I grabbed my jacket and the iron letter opener from my desk. Ridiculous, but it made me feel less helpless. Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 was 20 minutes from my French Quarter apartment if I caught the streetcar. 30 if I walked. The October night air bit cold against my skin, colder than it should have been for New Orleans. Or maybe my body temperature was running hot. Everything felt wrong lately, like my skin didn't fit quite right anymore. I'd visited my mother's grave exactly once since the funeral. Couldn't bear it. Couldn't bear the way the other mourners had whispered about how young she was, how tragic, how her daughter was all alone now. Couldn't bear the weight of unanswered questions that pressed down on me every time I looked at that headstone. But tonight something pulled me forward. Not curiosity. Something deeper. Something in my blood that recognized a call home. The cemetery gates stood open despite the late hour. Spanish moss dripped from ancient oaks, turning moonlight into something alien and silver. October 31st. 10 years to the day since Meredith Walker was laid to rest. The anniversary I'd spent a decade trying to forget. I checked my phone. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes. My mother's grave sat in the old section, beneath a weeping angel whose face had eroded into something haunting and blank. I knew the path by memory despite never wanting to walk it again. Past the Laveau tomb. Past the raised crypts that made New Orleans burial grounds look like small cities. Then I saw them. I dropped behind a marble crypt, heart slamming against my ribs so hard I tasted copper. 12 figures stood in a perfect circle around my mother's grave. Each wore a flowing crimson overcoat that caught the moonlight like fresh blood. Each held a black candle burning with silver flame that cast no shadows. At the center, kneeling on an ornate cloth of gold laid across the grass, was a man who didn't kneel for anyone. I knew this with absolute certainty despite never having seen him before. He wore white and gold, fabric that seemed to glow with its own light. His hair fell past his shoulders in a platinum cascade that caught the moon. Even kneeling, he radiated power that pressed against my skin like atmospheric pressure before a storm. A sword rested point down in the earth before him. Its blade was inscribed with names in a dozen different scripts, spanning what looked like centuries of death. He spoke in a language that sounded like music in mourning. Old French maybe. Or something older that French had borrowed from. His voice carried weight, the kind of authority that came from centuries, not years. The 12 figures bowed their heads in unison. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly jumped out of my skin. 12 a.m. The man in gold and white switched to English, his voice carrying clearly across the cemetery. "Forgive me, Meredith Walker, for I could not save you. The Sanguine Order took you before I could reach you. Before I could bring you home." He pressed his hand flat against the earth. "But I will not fail our daughter again. This I swear on blood that has not spilled in 3 centuries. This I swear on love that has not faded in 10 years of your absence. Our daughter." The words hit like a physical blow. I must have made a sound. Or maybe he'd known I was there all along. Because his head turned with predatory precision, and golden eyes found mine across 30 feet of moonlit cemetery. Those eyes. I'd seen them every day of my life. In mirrors. In photographs. In my mother's face when she'd look at me with an expression I could never quite name. Recognition hit like lightning. He stood in one fluid motion and I saw my own face reflected in immortal features. The same bone structure. The same sharp cheekbones and full mouth. The same eyes that weren't quite human that caught light wrong. "You have your mother's courage," he said, his voice carrying clearly. "Coming here alone." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Every rational part of my brain screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. "Who are you?" The words came out steadier than I felt. "I am Uriel Lohengrin." He took a step forward, and the 12 figures in crimson shifted slightly, ready to defend or attack at his command. King of the Sanguine Court. The Crimson Throne. Master of House Lohengrin. Another step. "And your father." The world tilted. I grabbed the crypt for support. "That's impossible. My mother never." She would have told me. "Your mother died protecting you from the truth." His expression was carved from grief. "From me. From what you are. From those who would kill you for the blood in your veins." One of the crimson-coated figures, an older man with silver threaded through his dark beard, moved to Uriel's side. "Sire, we don't know if she's been compromised. The Order. If the Sanguine Order knew about her, Valdis, she'd already be dead." Uriel's eyes never left mine. "No. Someone else sent that message. Someone who wanted us both here tonight." As if summoned by his words, the crack of gunfire split the night. Silver bullets tore through the crimson-coated figures. 2 went down immediately, screaming in a way that sounded almost inhuman. The others moved with impossible speed, becoming blurs of crimson and violence. Uriel was in front of me before I could process movement, his body a shield between me and the attackers emerging from behind the crypts. 6 figures in tactical black, weapons raised. On their shoulders, a white insignia of a sword through a bleeding heart. "Run," Uriel ordered. Instead I watched him transform. His eyes blazed gold. His fingers lengthened into claws. And when he smiled, his fangs caught moonlight like the blade of his sword. "The Sanguine Order," he said, and his voice carried death. "How kind of you to save me the trouble of hunting you." What happened next lasted maybe 30 seconds. It felt like hours. The crimson-coated figures, the Crimson Guard, I realized, tore through the attackers with brutal efficiency. No mercy. No hesitation. Just violence so fast and precise it seemed choreographed. Uriel moved like violence itself. One moment he stood before me. The next, 3 attackers were down, throats torn, weapons scattered. One escaped. Disappeared into the night with supernatural speed of his own. The silence after was deafening. Uriel turned back to me slowly, giving me time to see what he was. Blood on his mouth. Claws still extended. Eyes still burning with ancient power. "This is what you are, Ygraine," he said quietly. "This is what your mother died preventing you from becoming. This is the truth that can no longer stay buried." I stared at him. At the bodies. At the blood on my mother's grave. At my own hands, where I could see my fingernails had sharpened into points without my conscious thought. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You're awakening." One of the Crimson Guard, a woman with hair like midnight and eyes like winter, stepped forward. She pressed her fingers to her earpiece. "Because vampire nature cannot be denied forever. On this anniversary, 10 years after your mother's death, your blood remembers what it is." Uriel nodded once. "The Sanguine Order knows you exist now. That man who escaped will report your location. They killed Meredith to prevent exactly what you're becoming." He held out his hand. "If you want to survive, if you want truth, come with me, or run forever and die alone within days." I looked at his hand. At the bodies scattered around my mother's grave. At the 12 figures in crimson watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility. At the blood on my own fingernails. Everything I'd believed about my life, about my mother, about reality itself, had died in the space of 30 seconds. But my teeth were sharp. My reflection was wrong. And somewhere deep in my blood I'd always known I was different. I took his hand. His skin was cold. Not dead cold. Old cold. Like marble that had never known warmth. "What am I?" I asked. Uriel Lohengrin, Vampire King, looked at me with eyes that held centuries of sorrow. "You are my daughter," he said. "Born of forbidden love between vampire and human. The only hybrid to survive infancy in 300 years. The living proof that 2 worlds can create something new." He squeezed my hand gently. "And the greatest threat the Sanguine Order has ever faced." The first time I woke at 3:33 a.m., I blamed the coffee I'd drunk at midnight while cataloging a shipment of grimoires from an estate sale in Savannah. The second time I blamed the neighbor's cat that howled like it was being murdered. By the 10th night I stopped pretending there was a rational explanation. I would simply open my eyes, no grogginess, no gradual emergence from sleep, and find myself fully conscious, heart racing, staring at the antique clock on my nightstand as its hands aligned in perfect symmetry. 3:33. Every night for 10 nights straight, as October crept toward its end and the anniversary I'd spent a decade avoiding drew closer. Tonight was no different except for the music box. It sat on the shelf across from my bed, mother of pearl inlay catching the streetlight that filtered through my curtains. I'd inherited it the day they buried her, along with her books, her notes, and the shop downstairs that had become both my livelihood and my prison. The music box was the only thing I'd kept in my bedroom, though I never wound it. Couldn't bear to hear Claire de Lune again, couldn't bear the way it would bring back memories of her humming along while she worked, her fingers trailing over ancient texts with the kind of reverence most people reserved for religious artifacts. But now it was playing. Debussy's melody filled my small apartment, delicate and impossibly sad. I sat up slowly, my rational mind offering explanations even as something deeper knew better. Old mechanisms. Thermal expansion. Vibrations from the street below. Except I could see the key turning. Smooth. Deliberate. As if invisible fingers wound it with practiced care. I threw back the covers and crossed the room in 3 strides, snatching the box and nearly dropping it when warmth pulsed against my palms. Not hot. Just warm, like something living had been holding it. The music stopped the instant I touched it, the key going still. My nose started bleeding. I pressed my hand to my face, felt the hot slickness coating my fingers. This was the 4th nosebleed this week. I'd made an appointment with a doctor for Monday, convinced myself it was stress or allergies or the dust from the shop. But as I tilted my head back and tasted copper sliding down my throat, something in my hindbrain whispered that I was lying to myself. The same way I'd been lying for 26 years. I cleaned myself up in the bathroom, avoiding my reflection until I couldn't anymore. The mirror showed what it always showed. Dark blonde hair that refused to stay tamed, eyes that sat somewhere between gray and blue depending on the light, A face my mother used to call striking when she was being kind and severe when she wasn't. But there was something different tonight. Something in the sharpness of my cheekbones, the way my pupils seemed slightly too large, the flash of white when I tested my teeth with my tongue. They felt sharper. The canines especially. I was losing my mind. That was the only explanation. Stress and isolation and too many years spent alone with books that described impossible things in excruciating detail. I'd read accounts of vampirism in a dozen languages, analyzed variations of the myth across continents and centuries, written papers on the psychological needs that spawned such persistent legends. But I'd never believed. Not for a second. Now my teeth were sharp and I craved the taste of copper in my throat. I went downstairs to the shop because sleep was impossible. Blackthorn Books occupied the ground floor of a narrow Creole townhouse on Chartres Street, wedged between a tarot reader who worked by appointment only and a jazz club that didn't open until noon. I'd bought the building with my mother's life insurance money, unable to stay in the house where she died but unwilling to leave New Orleans entirely. This felt like a compromise, though with whom or what I'd never examined too closely. The shop specialized in occult manuscripts, grimoires and esoteric texts. Most of my clients were academics or collectors, people who treated these books the same way I did, as historical artifacts, windows into the belief systems of the past. Occasionally I'd get someone who actually believed, who'd whisper about curses or summonings or blood magic like these weren't just words on deteriorating vellum. I'd always found them sad. People so desperate for mystery that they'd rather believe in demons than accept that the world was exactly what it appeared to be. Indifferent and ultimately comprehensible. The irony tasted like ashes now. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, intending to work on inventory. Instead I found myself searching for the symptoms I'd been ignoring. Heightened senses, photosensitivity, unexplained nosebleeds, dental changes. The results were predictable. Anemia, vitamin deficiencies, rare genetic disorders. And because this was the internet, vampirism. I closed the laptop harder than necessary. A photograph sat on my desk in a silver frame. My mother and me at my graduate school graduation. She was beaming, pride radiating from every line of her face. I was smiling too, but there was distance in my eyes even then. I'd perfected the art of seeming present while keeping everyone at arm's length, including her. Especially her toward the end. She died 2 weeks after that photo was taken. Sudden cardiac arrest while working late in this very shop. I'd found her slumped over a 15th century grimoire, still wearing her reading glasses, a cup of tea gone cold beside her. The coroner said her heart had simply stopped. No warning. No explanation. Just there one moment and gone the next. I'd accepted it because the alternative was madness. Because asking questions meant acknowledging the inconsistencies. The way she'd grown increasingly paranoid in those final months. The journal entries that stopped making sense. The phone calls she'd taken whispered French or Italian or languages I couldn't identify. The way she'd looked at me sometimes like she was memorizing my face, like she expected never to see me again. The way she told me she loved me 3 times the day she died. I pulled out the bottom drawer of my desk where I kept her journals. I'd read them once, right after the funeral, then locked them away because they'd made me feel like I didn't know her at all. But last month, on a night I'd drunk too much wine and felt too much grief, I'd opened them again. That's when I'd found the entries that changed everything. September 28th. They're watching the shop again. Same car, different plates. The order is getting bolder. Or perhaps I'm just getting paranoid. Uriel would say I worry too much. But Uriel doesn't understand what it means to be human and terrified. He's forgotten. If he ever knew. October 15th. Ygraine asked about her father today. First time in years. I told her the same lie I've always told. That he died before she was born, that it was too painful to discuss. She looked at me with those eyes, his eyes, and I saw the moment she decided not to push. She's always been good at that. Too good. I've made her afraid to need anyone, even me. October 24th. If they find out what Ygraine is, if they discover Uriel's blood runs in her veins, the Sanguine Order will never stop hunting her. I've kept her hidden for 26 years. I can keep her hidden forever. Even from him. Especially from him. That entry was dated 3 days before she died. The crimson envelope appeared on my doorstep at dawn, wedged under the door like someone had slipped it through while I wasn't looking. No postmark. No return address. Just my name written in silver ink that seemed to shimmer in the early light. Inside, a single card. Your mother's grave. Midnight. The truth she died protecting can no longer stay buried. Come alone, Ygraine Lohengrin. Lohengrin. A surname I'd never carried. A name I'd never heard spoken. But something in my blood sang when I read it. A recognition so deep it bypassed thought entirely. I should have thrown it away. Should have called the police or Sutton or anyone. Instead, I found myself checking the time, 6:47 a.m., and calculating how many hours until midnight. How many hours until I could finally stop pretending I didn't know something was wrong. Had always been wrong. Would always be wrong until I faced whatever waited at my mother's grave. The pull was undeniable now. Not curiosity. Not even fear. Something deeper. Something that felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. The SUV dropped me 3 blocks from Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 because even Uber drivers had enough sense not to linger near the dead at midnight. The blood moon hung fat and crimson overhead, turning the French Quarter into something from a fever dream. I'd read about blood moons in a dozen grimoires. Eclipses that supposedly amplified supernatural power, thinned the veil between worlds. Academic nonsense I'd always thought. Now the red light painted my hands the color of fresh wounds, and I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I arrived at 11:47 p.m., slipping through the cemetery gates that stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow me. Spanish moss hung from ancient oaks and curtains that moved without wind, and the raised tombs cast shadows too deep for the moonlight to penetrate. New Orleans buried its dead above ground because the water table wouldn't permit anything else, turning cemeteries into cities of marble and stone where the dead had better architecture than the living. My mother's grave sat in the old section, beneath a weeping angel whose face had eroded into something both beautiful and terrible. I knew the path despite having walked it only once, the day they'd lowered her into the family crypt. The Walkers had been in New Orleans for 6 generations, my mother used to say with pride. I'd never asked why she'd chosen Walker as our name when Lohengrin was apparently my birthright. I dropped behind a crypt topped with a cross that had tilted at an angle that suggested the dead weren't resting easy. From here, I had a clear view of my mother's grave and whatever was about to happen. 11:53 p.m. 7 minutes. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth, those 2 sharp teeth that had no rational explanation. I pressed my back against cold marble and tried to remember how to breathe. They arrived at 11:58 p.m. 12 figures materialized from the darkness like they'd been woven from shadows. Each wore a crimson overcoat that fell to their ankles, the fabric so rich it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in perfect silence, no footsteps on the gravel paths, no rustling of cloth. Just smooth, predatory grace that raised every hair on the back of my neck. They formed a circle around my mother's grave with geometric precision. Each produced a black candle from within their coats, and when they lit them, without matches, without lighters, just a gesture that made flame appear, the fire burned silver instead of gold. The silver light cast no shadows. At midnight exactly, a 13th figure appeared. He didn't walk. One moment the center of the circle was empty, the next he stood there as if he'd always existed in that exact spot and reality was only now catching up. He carried a sword that looked older than the cemetery, its blade inscribed with names in scripts I couldn't read from this distance. Behind him, 2 of the crimson-coated figures unfurled a cloth of gold across the grass before my mother's headstone. He knelt. The movement was fluid and practiced, the kind of gesture repeated so many times it had become muscle memory. He placed the sword point down in the earth before him, his hands resting on the pommel. The position of a knight before his liege, a supplicant before his god. Or a man before the grave of someone he'd loved and lost. His hair caught the blood moon's light, platinum blonde falling past his shoulders in a cascade that looked like poured silver. Even kneeling, he radiated authority that pressed against my skin like barometric pressure before a hurricane. This was someone who commanded not through force but through sheer presence, the kind of power that came from centuries of being obeyed without question. He spoke in a language I didn't recognize, something that sounded like Latin married to music. The words rolled across the cemetery with weight, and the 12 figures bowed their heads in unison. This was ritual, I realized. Ancient and sacred and repeated exactly the same way for years. Maybe decades. Maybe longer. The silver flames on the candles flared brighter. Then he switched to English and his voice was exactly what I'd expected and nothing I was prepared for. Rich and resonant, carrying the faintest accent I couldn't place. European definitely. But old European, the kind that had been smoothed by centuries of travel and adaptation. "Forgive me, Meredith Walker," he said, and the grief in his voice was so raw it hurt to hear. "For I could not save you. The Sanguine Order took you before I could reach you. Before I could bring you home to the court that should have been yours. Before I could give our daughter the protection of my name. Our daughter." The words punched the air from my lungs. 10 years, he continued. 10 years of your absence. 10 years of watching from shadows, ensuring she survived when I could not ensure you did. 10 years of honoring your wish that she remain hidden, remain human, remain ignorant of what flows in her veins. He pressed his hand flat against the earth above her grave. But she is awakening. You knew she would. On this anniversary in her 26th year, the blood calls to blood. I cannot hide her anymore, beloved. I cannot protect her from a distance. The Order knows. They have always known, waiting for this moment when she would manifest and become vulnerable. Pause. When he spoke again, his voice was iron wrapped in silk. This I swear on blood that has not spilled in 3 centuries. This I swear on love that has not faded in 10 years of your absence. I will not fail our daughter again. I will keep her safe. I will teach her what she is. And I will destroy anyone who tries to take her from me the way they took you. I must have made a sound. Or maybe he'd known I was there all along, had felt my presence the same way I'd felt pulled to this place. Because his head turned with predatory precision, and golden eyes found mine across 30 feet of moonlit cemetery. Those eyes. I'd seen them every day of my life. In mirrors. In photographs. In my mother's sketches that I'd found in her journals. Drawings of a man who looked exactly like this, exactly like me. You have your mother's courage, he said, rising to his feet in one fluid motion. Coming here alone. I stepped out from behind the crypt because hiding seemed pointless now. My legs shook but I kept my spine straight, kept my voice level. Who are you? I am Uriel Lohengrin. He took a step forward and the 12 figures in crimson shifted slightly, a subtle repositioning that put them between their leader and potential threat. King of the Sanguine Court. The Crimson Throne. Master of House Lohengrin for 417 years. Another step. Pose. Close enough that I could see his face clearly now. It was my face. Older, masculine, refined by centuries instead of decades. But the bones were identical. The eyes were identical. Even the small scar through his left eyebrow matched the one I'd gotten falling off my bike at age 7. And your father, he finished softly. The world tilted. I grabbed the nearest headstone for support, my rational mind scrambling for explanations that wouldn't come. That's impossible. My mother never, she would have told me. Your mother died protecting you from the truth. Pain flickered across his face, genuine and devastating. From me. From what you are. From the Sanguine Order who would kill you for the crime of existing. One of the crimson-coated figures, an older man with silver threading through his dark beard, moved to Uriel's side. His voice was gravelly, seasoned by time. Sire, we don't know if she's been compromised. The Order. If the Order knew about her, Valdis, she'd already be dead. Uriel's eyes never left mine. No. Someone else sent that message. Someone who wanted us both here tonight. Then it's a trap, said a woman's voice, cold and sharp as winter steel. She stepped forward into better light, tall with midnight hair pulled back in a severe knot and eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. We should leave. Now. We should see who said it, countered a younger-looking man, though something in his eyes suggested age that his face denied. He had the compact build of a fighter and a smile that promised violence. I could use the entertainment. Lucien, this isn't a game. The woman, Octavia, I guessed from the way Uriel had mentioned her in his litany, snapped. Everything's a game, Octavia. It's just a question of whether you're winning. Enough, Uriel said quietly, and they fell silent instantly. He turned back to me. Your mother and I met 30 years ago. She was a scholar researching vampire mythology, convinced we were fiction. I was amused by her certainty. Her insistence that she could explain away centuries of truth with psychology and anthropology. Despite everything, I felt a flash of recognition. That sounded exactly like my mother. I showed her what I was, he continued. Expected fear. Expected revulsion. Instead, she asked me to sit for an interview. A ghost of a smile. That was how it started. Academic interest. Then friendship. Then something neither of us intended but neither could deny. Vampires can't have children, I heard myself say. Every myth agrees. The undead can't create life. The undead can't, Uriel agreed. But I'm not dead, Ygraine. None of us are. We're transformed. Changed on a cellular level that mimics death but isn't. And in rare cases, very rare, a vampire and human can create something new. He gestured to me. You were born during a solar eclipse. Your mother went into labor as the moon covered the sun, and you emerged as light returned to the world. A child of shadow and light. Human and vampire. Impossible and inevitable. The crack of gunfire split the night. Silver bullets tore through two of the crimson-coated figures. They went down screaming, and the sound wasn't human. It was something older, something that understood pain on a level humans had forgotten. The others moved. I'd never seen anything move that fast. 1 second they stood in formation, the next they were blurs of crimson and violence, intercepting 6 figures in tactical black who'd emerged from behind the crypts. On the attacker's shoulders I saw an insignia, a white sword through a bleeding heart. The Sanguine Order, Uriel said, his voice gone cold and deadly. He was in front of me before I could process movement, his body a shield. How kind of you to save me the trouble of hunting you. What happened next lasted maybe 30 seconds. It felt like watching a nature documentary on predators. The Crimson Guard tore through the attackers with brutal efficiency, and I finally understood what all those grimoires had tried to describe and failed. This wasn't movie vampires. This wasn't romantic tragedy. This was apex predators doing what evolution had designed them to do. Valdis moved like water, flowing around bullets that should have hit him, his hands moving too fast to track. Where he touched, attackers fell, throats opened, weapons clattered. Octavia fought with cold precision, each movement economical and lethal. She disarmed one man, broke his arm, and used him as a shield against his own allies' bullets before discarding him like trash. Lucien laughed as he killed, and somehow that was more terrifying than the violence itself. He enjoyed this. But Uriel was something else entirely. His eyes blazed gold. His fingers lengthened into claws that looked like they'd been carved from ivory. And when he moved through the attackers, it wasn't fighting. It was artistry. 3 men down in seconds, their weapons scattered, their blood painting the graves. One attacker broke away from the fight, running with supernatural speed of his own. Enhanced, I realized. The Order used vampire blood to make themselves faster, stronger. They'd become the thing they hunted. The others lay dead or dying. The Crimson Guard reformed around Uriel, barely winded, their crimson coats unmarred despite the violence. Uriel turned back to me slowly, giving me time to see what he was. Blood on his mouth. Claws still extended. Eyes still burning with ancient power. This is what you are, Ygraine, he said quietly. This is what your mother died preventing you from becoming. This is the truth that can no longer stay buried. I stared at him. At the bodies. At the blood on my mother's grave. At my own hands, where I could see my fingernails had sharpened into points without my conscious thought. I don't understand, I whispered. Octavia stepped forward, her winter eyes assessing. You're awakening. Because vampire nature cannot be denied forever. On this anniversary, 10 years after your mother's death, your blood remembers what it is. Uriel held out his hand. The Sanguine Order knows you exist now. That man who escaped will report your location. They killed Meredith to prevent exactly what you're becoming. A hybrid who bridges both worlds, who threatens their entire philosophy that vampires are monsters to be destroyed. His golden eyes held mine. If you want to survive, if you want truth, come with me, or run forever and die alone within days. Choose now, daughter. Because we're out of time. I looked at his hand. At the bodies scattered around my mother's grave. At the 12 figures in crimson watching me with expressions ranging from curiosity to hostility to something that might have been pity. At the blood on my own fingernails that had appeared without permission. Everything I'd believed about my life, about my mother, about reality itself, had died in 30 seconds of violence. But my teeth were sharp. My reflection was wrong. And somewhere deep in my blood I'd always known I was different. I took his hand. Uriel's skin was cold. Not corpse cold, I'd touched enough death in my work to know that particular temperature. This was old cold, like marble that had stood for centuries and forgotten what warmth felt like. His fingers closed around mine with surprising gentleness, as if he was afraid I might shatter. "Hold tight," he said. The world twisted. I'd read accounts of vampire abilities in 100 different texts. Supernatural speed, strength, hypnosis. Never had any of them mention whatever this was. Space folding in on itself, reality becoming negotiable. My stomach lurched and my vision blurred, and for one horrible second I felt like I was being turned inside out. Then we were somewhere else. The transition was so abrupt I stumbled, would have fallen if Uriel hadn't steadied me. We stood in a vast entrance hall that shouldn't exist. Above us, a vaulted ceiling soared into shadows too deep for the chandelier light to penetrate. The chandelier itself looked like it had been stolen from Versailles. Crystal and gold, each piece catching light and throwing it in prismatic patterns across walls lined with tapestries that depicted battles I didn't recognize. "Welcome to the Crimson Court," Uriel said, releasing my hand. "The heart of House Lohengrin." I turned slowly, trying to make sense of the architecture. Renaissance arches met Gothic pointed windows. Baroque ornamentation fought with medieval stone. It was like someone had collected centuries of European design and forced them to coexist in impossible harmony. The art alone would make any museum weep. I recognized a Caravaggio on one wall, what looked like an early Botticelli on another. Sculptures that belonged in the Louvre stood in alcoves like casual decoration. "How is this here?" My voice echoed in the cavernous space. "We're beneath the French Quarter. There's no room for..." "We're not beneath the quarter." "Not exactly." Valdis had appeared beside me, moving with that unnerving silence they all seemed to possess. "The sanctum exists adjacent to your world, occupying the same space but slightly offset. You'd call it a pocket dimension, perhaps. We call it home." The other Crimson Guard had materialized around us. I counted them now that I wasn't watching them kill. 12 figures in crimson, each distinct in ways I hadn't noticed during the violence. Octavia with her winter eyes and severe beauty. Lucian with his fighter's build and unsettling smile. Valdis with silver in his beard and something calculating in his gaze. Others I hadn't been introduced to yet. A woman with copper skin and eyes like molten gold who watched me with open curiosity. A man who looked barely 20 but carried himself like he'd seen empires rise and fall. A pair who stood close enough to be lovers or twins or both, their features mirror images in masculine and feminine. "The court will want to meet her," Octavia said, directing the comment to Uriel. "This won't stay quiet. Let them want." Uriel's voice carried absolute authority. "She needs time before facing the vultures. Rooms have been prepared. She stays in the royal wing until I determine otherwise." Something flickered across Valdis's face. Disapproval maybe. Or concern. "Sire, that sends a message." Acknowledging her so openly. "I'm acknowledging my daughter." Uriel's golden eyes went hard. "Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to challenge me directly." Silence. The kind that said this argument had been had before would be had again, but not right now. Uriel gestured for me to follow. I did, because what else was I going to do? We walked through corridors that seemed to shift and change, like the sanctum was alive and rearranging itself. Doorways appeared where none had been seconds before. Staircases spiraled in directions that hurt my brain. At one point I looked out a window and saw New Orleans as if from a great height, but when I blinked we were clearly underground. "The sanctum responds to will," Uriel explained, noticing my confusion. "Those of us who belong here can shape it to our needs. You'll learn." "I'm not staying." He didn't break stride. "You'll stay until you can survive outside it. Your awakening has made you vulnerable. Imagine going through puberty again, but instead of hormones it's predatory instincts you don't know how to control. You could kill someone accidentally. Or yourself if the order finds you before you're ready." We stopped before an ornate door carved with symbols I half recognized from grimoires. Protection wards, maybe. Or ownership marks. Uriel pushed it open and gestured me inside. The suite was larger than my entire apartment. High ceilings, mullioned windows that showed impossible views. Furniture that looked Renaissance but felt contemporary in its comfort. Bookshelves lined one wall, packed with volumes that made my antiquarian heart ache. A canopied bed dominated one corner, draped in velvet the color of old blood. and on a writing desk by the window sat boxes I recognized. Mom's things, I whispered, crossing the room like I was in a trance. Her journals. Her research. Her personal effects that had been boxed up after her death, that I'd sorted through once and then couldn't bear to touch again. I took them before the estate sale, Uriel said quietly. I couldn't let strangers paw through her life. Thought, someday you might want them. Might be ready for them. I ran my fingers over the box labeled personal, 1995 to 2015 in my own handwriting from 10 years ago. You've been watching me. For 26 years. No apology in his voice. From a distance. Respecting Meredith's wish that you grow up human. But watching. Always watching. Making sure you were safe. I turned to face him, anger finally breaking through the shock. Safe? My mother died and I found her body and I spent 10 years thinking I was alone and you were watching? You could have. What? His voice cracked like a whip. Revealed myself? Dragged you into this world when you were 16 and grieving? Your mother made me promise, Ygraine. Made me swear on our love that I wouldn't claim you until your awakening. That I'd give you every possible year of human life before this consumed you. She should have told me. She was trying to protect you. He moved to the window, his profile sharp against impossible starlight. The Sanguine Order was founded 8 centuries ago to hunt our kind. They believe vampires are abominations, demons wearing human skin. For most of history they were right to fear us. We were monsters. Some of us evolved. Learned to feed without killing. Built societies with laws and consequences. The court exists to enforce those laws, to prove we can be more than predators. He paused. But the Order doesn't care about evolution. To them we're all the same. And a hybrid, a child of both worlds, proves their entire philosophy wrong. You're their worst nightmare, Ygraine. Living proof that vampire and human can create something new. I sank into the chair by the desk, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. It was after 2 a.m. I'd witnessed murder, learned my father was a vampire king, and been pulled into a pocket dimension beneath New Orleans. My brain was done processing. There's blood in the refrigerator, Uriel said, gesturing to what I'd assumed was an armoire. You'll need it soon. The awakening accelerates hunger. I'm not drinking blood. You will. Or you'll tear someone's throat out when the craving becomes unbearable. He moved toward the door. Valdis will begin your training tomorrow. Combat control vampire law. You need to be able to defend yourself. I'm not staying long enough for training. He paused at the threshold, looked back with eyes that held centuries of sorrow. You're staying until I'm certain you won't die the moment you leave. That's not negotiable. His expression softened slightly. I failed to protect your mother. I won't fail you too. Even if you hate me for it. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. I sat in silence, staring at the boxes of my mother's belongings, until I couldn't stand it anymore. I opened the first journal, dated from the year I was born. January 15th. Uriel says the court is furious. That I've endangered him politically by carrying his child. But when he holds me, when he presses his ear to my swelling belly and listens to our daughter's heartbeat, I see something I didn't think vampires could feel. Hope. I read until dawn light filtered through impossible windows. Read about my mother's love affair with a vampire king. About the risks she'd taken, the society she'd navigated, the threats she'd ignored because she believed love conquered all. And about what she'd discovered in those final months. September 2nd. The Order isn't what they claim. I found evidence of trafficking, supernatural beings kidnapped and sold to the highest bidder. Vampires, yes, but also shifters, fae, anything inhuman. They're not destroying monsters. They're profiting from them. September 20th. I have proof now. Financial records. Witness testimony. Enough to expose them. Uriel says I should let it go, that making enemies of the Order is suicide. But I'm human. They can't touch me without proving everything they claim to stand against. I can do this. I have to do this. The final entry was dated the day she died. October 31st, they know. I don't know how, but they know I have the evidence. There was a man outside the shop this morning. Same man from the cathedral. I've sent everything to my contact at the Times. It will publish whether I'm here to see it or not. Ygraine, if you're reading this, I love you. I'm sorry I kept so much from you. But I was trying to build you a world where monsters can't hurt the innocent. Where your father's people and mine can coexist. Finish what I started. Be brave. And forgive me for loving you enough to lie. The journal trembled in my hands. She hadn't died of natural causes. The Order had killed her because she'd threatened to expose them. And I'd spent 10 years believing it was random, meaningless, just bad luck and bad genetics. Someone knocked on the door. Training starts in 1 hour, Octavia's cold voice called. Valdis is waiting in the combat hall. Don't be late. The next week blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and information overload. Valdis taught me to fight, or tried to. I had speed I didn't know how to control, strength that surprised me, and absolutely no combat instincts whatsoever. He was patient in the way drill sergeants are patient, which is to say not at all, but I could see grudging respect starting to form when I actually managed to land a hit. Octavia taught me control. How to manage the bloodlust that built like pressure behind my eyes. How to extend my nails into claws and retract them. How to move through a room without making sound. She was harder than Valdis, colder, like she was personally offended by my existence but would do her duty anyway. The hunger grew worse each day. I'd resisted at first, stubbornly eating human food that tasted like ash in my mouth. But on the 4th night I'd opened the refrigerator Uriel had mentioned and found crystal decanters filled with dark red liquid. The smell hit me like a physical force. I drank without meaning to, the hunger taking over before my rational mind could object. It was warm and copper and life itself pouring down my throat. When I finished the first glass I poured a second, then a third, until the craving finally subsided into something manageable. I'd stood there afterward, staring at my reflection in the darkened window, blood on my lips, and understood what my mother had tried to save me from. This thing I was becoming. This monster wearing my face. I met Bastion on the 5th day during a break in training. He appeared in the doorway of the combat hall like he'd been summoned by my exhaustion. Tall and rangy, with dark hair that fell into darker eyes and scars that traced patterns across his exposed forearms. You must be the miracle child, he said, his voice carrying a British accent worn smooth by time. Half human, half vampire, fully fucked. Excuse me. I'm Bastion Crow. Damper. Which means I'm also a hybrid just from a different recipe. Vampire father, human mother who got turned during pregnancy. Created abomination, take your pick of terminology. He leaned against the doorframe, studying me with open curiosity. You and I are the only two in existence. Lucky us. There was something brittle in his smile, something that spoke of old wounds and older isolation. Uriel asked me to check on you. Make sure you haven't tried to stake yourself yet. Have you? The thought hasn't crossed my mind. Give it time. He pushed off the doorframe. Word of advice. Don't trust anyone here. Half the court sees you as a political opportunity. The other half sees you as an abomination that needs to be quietly removed. Uriel can't protect you from everything no matter how much he wants to. Why are you telling me this? Because someone should. He started to leave, then paused. And because I know what it's like. Being caught between two worlds. Belonging to neither. Shit if you were wondering. But you survive or you don't. Your choice. I met Seraphine that same evening at a formal dinner I couldn't avoid. She swept into the private dining room like she owned it. Tall and willowy, with auburn hair that cascaded past her shoulders and eyes the color of aged whiskey. She wore a gown that looked like it cost more than my bookshop and moved with the kind of grace that came from centuries of practice. So you're the infamous daughter, she said, claiming the seat beside me without asking. You look so much like him. The eyes especially. They have her mouth. Meredith's. I met her once, you know. Sharp woman. Too sharp for her own good as it turned out. You knew my mother? Briefly. She came to court once before you were born. Caused quite the scandal. Seraphine smiled, and it was like watching a cat eye a canary. A human in the Crimson Court. Some thought Uriel had lost his mind. Others thought it was a brilliant political maneuver. Turns out it was just love. How disappointing. She reached out and traced one finger along my jawline before I could pull away. But you're something else entirely. Do you know what you represent? The end of 800 years of genetic impossibility. The proof that we're not the dead things the Order claims. Your evolution incarnate. You're also quite beautiful. I jerked back. I'm not interested. Not yet, perhaps. But you will be. She stood, her gown flowing like water. Everyone wants something here, Ygraine. I at least am honest about it. I want you for political advantage and personal pleasure. No lies between us. Think about which is preferable, my honesty or everyone else's manipulation. She left me sitting there, appetite gone. The assassination attempt came on the 7th night. I'd just finished training with Valdis, a brutal session that left me bruised and gasping, when Octavia brought me my evening ration. Blood in a crystal glass, like something from a twisted cocktail party. I drank it without thinking, too tired to care anymore about the horror of it. The poison hit 30 seconds later. My throat closed. Fire spread through my veins, burning from the inside out. I hit the floor, gasping, clawing at my neck like I could tear out the poison with my own hands. Octavia was at my side instantly, her cold hands gripping my face. Valdis. Now. The older vampire appeared, took one look at me and swore viciously in a language I didn't recognize. Silver compound. Concentrated. This should have killed her instantly. But it didn't, Octavia said, watching my face with clinical focus. The hybrid constitution. She's metabolizing it. Took 5 minutes that felt like hours. 5 minutes of my body fighting something that should have killed me, my human and vampire cells apparently at war over which got to survive. Eventually my hybrid nature won, the poison breaking down into something my system could process and expel. I lay on the floor afterward, drenched in sweat that smelled like metal, and understood what Bastion had meant. Half the court wanted me dead. And someone in this sanctum had just tried to make it happen. Uriel appeared as I was being helped to my feet, his expression carved from fury. Who, he said, the word not a question but a promise of violence. Who had access to her rations? Anyone in the court, Valdis said quietly. The kitchens aren't secured. We never thought. You never thought someone would try to murder my daughter under my own roof? Gold bled into Uriel's eyes. Find them. I don't care how many you have to question. Find who did this. He turned to me and the fury softened into something worse, fear. I'm sorry, he said. I should have anticipated this. Should have protected you better. I found my voice, though it came out rough. You can't protect me from everything. Bastion was right. I'm either a tool or a threat. Nothing in between. You're my daughter. That's all that matters. But as I looked around at the faces watching us, some concerned, some calculating, some openly hostile, I understood the truth. I wasn't safe here. I wasn't safe anywhere. And the only person I could really trust in this elegant, deadly world was myself. Trust no one, Bastion had said. He'd been absolutely right. They found the assassin 3 days later, hiding in a storage vault beneath the kitchens like a rat in the walls. He was young, or looked young, which meant nothing in vampire society, with the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing you'd failed a task that didn't forgive failure. Uriel had him brought to what Valdis euphemistically called the questioning chamber. I insisted on being present despite Octavia's protests and Uriel's clear discomfort with the idea. If someone wanted me dead badly enough to poison me in the heart of the Crimson Court, I deserved to know who and why. The chamber was exactly what you'd expect from a place with that name. Stone walls, iron restraints, and the kind of ambient dread that came from centuries of suffering. The assassin was chained to a chair in the center, silver manacles cutting into his wrists. Silver burned vampires the way fire burns paper. Slowly, thoroughly, and without mercy. His name is Gregor Petrin, Valdis said, consulting a tablet that looked absurdly modern in the medieval setting. Turned 63 years ago. Romanian. No house affiliation on record, which means he's either very good at staying hidden or someone scrubbed his background. Uriel stood before the prisoner with the patience of something that had outlived empires. Who hired you? Gregor said nothing. His face was pale with pain but his jaw stayed locked. I can make this hurt worse, Uriel said conversationally. Much worse. Or you can tell me who wants my daughter dead and I'll make it quick. Still nothing. I stepped forward before I could think better of it. Let me try. Ygraine, Uriel started. He poisoned me. I'm owed answers. I moved closer to Gregor, studying his face. You don't look like a fanatic. He looked scared. Someone threatened you, didn't they? Told you what would happen if you didn't do this. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition maybe. Or surprise that I'd guessed correctly. I pressed on. Tell me who and maybe we can protect you from them. No one protects against House Corvinus, Gregor whispered, the words torn from him. No one survives their displeasure. I'm dead either way. At least Uriel will make it quick. House Corvinus. I'd heard the name in passing over the past week. One of the old houses, ancient rivals to Lohengrin, traditionalists who viewed any change as weakness. Constantine, Uriel said, and his voice carried the weight of centuries of enmity. Of course. He's wanted my throne for 200 years. Seize the hybrid as proof I've gone soft. Valdez stepped forward. If Corvinus is behind this, it's not just an assassination attempt. It's a declaration. He's testing our defenses, gauging our response. This won't be the last attack. I was still watching Gregor's face and something about him nagged at me. The way his eyes kept darting to mine. The rapid pulse at his throat. The smell coming off him that I was only now learning to identify. Fear and blood and something else. Something wrong. I acted on instinct I didn't know I possessed. I grabbed his chin, forced him to meet my eyes and felt something shift in my perception. The world went strange and sharp. I could hear his heartbeat, smell the poison residue in his sweat, taste his terror on the air. And underneath it all, there was a thread of connection like I'd tapped into something primal and ancient. Who else knows? I asked and my voice came out wrong, layered, compelling. What else did Constantine tell you? Gregor's pupils dilated. His resistance crumbled like sand. Not just Corvinus, he gasped. The Order. They're working together. Constantine gave them something, access to the Walker woman's grave. They took blood from the corpse. Said it was special because she'd been transforming when she died. Half human, half vampire. They need it for a weapon. The room went silent. What kind of weapon? Uriel's voice was dangerously soft. Genocide, Gregor whispered. A virus that targets vampire DNA. But it doesn't work with just vampire blood. They need the hybrid state. The transition. And they need, his eyes found mine. They need her blood too. Combined it becomes perfect. Kills every vampire on Earth within weeks. I released him and stepped back, my hand shaking. My mother's blood. They stole my mother's blood and they're going to use it to commit genocide. And someone in our court gave them access, Octavia said, her winter eyes gone arctic. Someone betrayed us to the Order. Someone in this sanctum. The accusations started immediately. The questioning chamber became a powder keg of suspicion and rage. I slipped out while they were arguing about interrogation protocols and security sweeps. I needed air or whatever passed for air in this pocket dimension. I found Bastion in the garden. An impossible space that existed somewhere between the sanctum and the real world, filled with night-blooming flowers that shouldn't grow in Louisiana. He stood with his back to me, his scarred hands gripping the stone balustrade. I heard what happened in the questioning chamber, he said without turning. You have a gift. Blood reading through touch. Rare ability even among purebloods. How did you know I was here? I always know where you are. He turned and something in his expression made my chest tight. I need to tell you something. Something that will make you hate me, but you deserve truth. What? I was Order, he said simply. Sent to infiltrate Vampire Society 8 years ago. Damper made good spies. We read as human to their tests, vampire to ours. I've been feeding them information for nearly a decade. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You. But I stopped. He moved closer, urgency in his voice. 2 years ago I stopped. Because of you. You didn't even know me 2 years ago. I knew everything about you. I was assigned to watch you after they discovered Uriel had a daughter. I had surveillance on your apartment, your shop. I read your emails, listened to your phone calls, watched you live your isolated little life surrounded by books that described my world, and you never believed a word of them. Horror and rage warred in my chest. You were spying on me. Yes. No apology, just fact. And somewhere along the way watching you became the only real thing in my life. You were so determined to be alone, to not need anyone. But I saw how you'd stop sometimes in the middle of cataloging a manuscript and just stare at nothing, and I knew you were thinking about your mother. I saw you eat dinner alone every night. I saw you cry exactly twice in 2 years, and both times you did it in the shower where no one could hear. Stop. I fell in love with a woman I'd never met, he continued relentlessly. And when the Order gave me the order to kill you if you awakened, I told them to fuck themselves. I've been hiding from them ever since. That's why I'm here. Uriel offered me protection in exchange for everything I know about Order operations. I wanted to hit him. Wanted to feel his blood on my knuckles, wanted to hurt him the way his words hurt me. But underneath the rage, I could sense something through that same blood-reading gift I'd used on Gregor. He was telling the truth. Every word. I hate you, I said. I know. But you're not lying. No. He held my gaze. I'm a lot of things, Ygraine. Spy, traitor, stalker, for being honest. But I'm not lying about this. I betrayed the Order for you. I'd do it again. Before I could respond, Seraphine appeared at the garden entrance, moving with that predatory grace. How touching. The spy declares his love. Very romantic. She looked at me. Has he mentioned that the Order is planning to raid the sanctum within days? Or did that slip his mind? Bastion's jaw tightened. I was getting to that. They know where we are, Seraphine continued. Gregor wasn't just an assassin. He was a beacon. They've been tracking his position, mapping the sanctum's location. They're coming, Ygraine. And when they do, they'll try to take you alive. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because unlike this one, she gestured dismissively at Bastion. I don't hide my motivations. I want you alive and powerful because your survival benefits House Ashcroft politically. Your death benefits Corvinus and the Order. Therefore I'm on your side. Simple calculation. Nothing's simple here, I said. No. But at least I'm honest about being self-interested. She moved closer and I caught her scent. Wine and roses and old blood. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Hide behind Uriel and hope he can protect you? Or become dangerous enough that people think twice before attacking? I looked between them. The spy who claimed to love me. The vampire noble who wanted to use me. Both telling me to become more of a monster. Uriel is offering you a blood bond, Seraphine said. He told me this morning. His ancient blood will strengthen you, accelerate your development. Make you formidable instead of just potential. It also makes the vampire nature permanent, Bastion added. There's no going back to human after that. You'll be fully one of them. One of us, Seraphine corrected. I thought about Gregor's confession. About my mother's stolen blood being weaponized. About the Order coming to take me and Corvinus' house waiting for me to fail, and everyone in the sanctum viewing me as either tool or threat. Where's Uriel? I asked. The blood bond ceremony happened at midnight in the heart of the sanctum, a chamber I'd never seen before, all black marble and silver inlay. The Crimson Guard stood in a circle around us, witnesses to something that hadn't happened in Uriel's reign. A king sharing his blood was a gift reserved for the most trusted allies or dire circumstances. I qualified as dire circumstances. Uriel stood before an altar that looked older than Christianity, a ceremonial blade laid across black velvet. He'd changed into formal robes, crimson and gold, looking every inch the ancient king he was. Are you certain? He asked me. Once this is done, you can't undo it. Your humanity will be forfeit. I stopped being fully human the moment I awakened, I said. This just makes official what's already true. He nodded once, then picked up the blade. The edge looked sharp enough to split atoms. He cut his palm without flinching, blood welling dark and rich. Then he offered the blade to me. I cut my own palm, the pain bright and clarifying. Uriel pressed our bleeding hands together. The world exploded. I was everywhere and everyone at once. I stood in a library in Renaissance Italy, watching a young man with platinum hair read by candlelight. I stood on a battlefield in medieval France, surrounded by bodies and screaming. I stood in a jazz club in 1985, watching Uriel see a woman across a crowded room and stop breathing because she was laughing at something her friend said, and her eyes were alive in a way that made centuries of existence suddenly feel worth living. Meredith, my mother. Young and vibrant and utterly unaware that the man watching her would become her whole world. I saw their courtship through his eyes. Her fascination with vampire mythology. His amusement at her academic certainty. The first time he showed her what he was and she'd said, "Fascinating. Can I take notes?" I saw her pregnant, saw him press his ear to her swollen belly and listen to my heartbeat with wonder. Saw him promise her he'd protect our family no matter the cost. And I saw the night she died. She was in the shop, late, researching Order corruption. She'd found too much, understood too much. 6 men entered through the back. She tried to run. They'd shot her with silver, enough to stop a vampire, enough to hurt but not kill a human. But she wasn't fully human anymore. She'd been transforming. Secret injections of Uriel's blood over weeks, trying to become vampire so she could stand beside him in the court. The silver hit her system mid-transformation and her body went into shock. Human cells fighting vampire cells, the silver poisoning both. Uriel had arrived minutes too late, summoned by a connection he couldn't explain but would later understand was our blood bond beginning to form. He'd held her as she died, felt her last breath against his neck. Watched the Order agents carry away vials of her blood while he was paralyzed by grief. And he'd made a promise to her corpse. To protect me. To let me grow up human as she'd wanted. To keep me hidden until my awakening when hiding was no longer possible. I came back to myself gasping. Our joined hands burned with silver fire that didn't hurt. Power flowed between us, centuries of accumulated strength joining with hybrid potential. When we separated, I could feel the difference immediately. Stronger. Faster. The vampire nature that had been awakening now roared fully to life, fused with my human will in a way that made me neither and both. It's done, Uriel said softly. Your house Lohengrin now. My daughter in blood as well as birth. I looked at my palm. The cut had already healed, leaving only a silver scar that matched the one on his hand. I saw her, I whispered. Mom. I saw what happened. I know. The bond shares memories. Shows truth. His voice broke slightly. I'm sorry you had to see that. Sorry I couldn't save her. She was trying to become like you. She loved you that much. And the Order killed her for it. Gold bled into his eyes. They stole her blood in that hybrid state. That's what they're using for the weapon. Your mother's final transformation, preserved and weaponized. Then we destroy it, I said. We find where they're keeping it and we burn it all. They'll have it heavily guarded. In a cathedral stronghold designed to withstand vampire assault. Valdez stepped forward from the circle. It would be suicide. Then we get creative. I turned to Bastian. You know their security protocols. Their response times. Help us. He nodded without hesitation. I looked at Seraphine. You want me alive for political benefit. That means you need me powerful. Help us. He smiled, slow and dangerous. Finally. The little hybrid grows claws. But as the Crimson Guard began planning an assault on the Order's stronghold, I felt something shift in my awareness. A presence, gentle and familiar, touching the edges of my consciousness. Mom's voice as clear as if she stood beside me. The weapon to save everything is hidden where your childhood began. Find the house where I raised you. Trust the Crimson Tide. Then she was gone, but the message remained. Whatever my mother had hidden, whatever insurance she'd left behind, it was in the house where I'd grown up. The house I'd sold after her death because I couldn't bear to stay there. We need to go to Metairie, I said. To my old house. Uriel looked at me sharply. Why? Because my mother left us something there. Something that can stop all of this. Or it's a trap, Octavia said. The Order could be using your emotions against you. Then we spring the trap and cut our way out, I said, and was surprised by how easily violence came to my voice now. I'm done hiding. I'm done being protected. If they want me dead, they'll have to earn it. I looked down at my hands. Saw the silver scar from the blood bond. Saw my nails sharpen into claws without conscious thought. I was becoming the monster they feared. And I was done apologizing for it. Uriel announced the conclave 3 days after the blood bond, and the sanctum erupted into controlled chaos. Nothing like this had happened in a century. The last time all the major houses gathered in one place, it had ended in bloodshed and a 50-year Cold War. But the hybrid question, combined with the Order threat, demanded unprecedented measures. They'll come for you, Octavia warned me during one of many preparation sessions. Every house will test you, question your legitimacy, try to find weakness. Corvinus especially. Constantine has been waiting for an excuse to challenge Uriel's authority for 2 centuries. She was fitting me with formal court attire, a gown that managed to be both beautiful and vaguely threatening, deep crimson silk with silver threading that caught light like blade edges. It felt like armor disguised as evening wear. I can handle scrutiny, I said, though my voice carried more confidence than I felt. Can you handle combat? Seraphine appeared in the doorway, looking immaculate in midnight blue. Because there will be challenges. Trials. They'll demand you prove yourself worthy of the Lohengrin name. Then I'll prove it. Such certainty. She moved closer, adjusting the gown's neckline with proprietary familiarity. I like it. You're finally becoming dangerous. The night of the conclave arrived with the weight of ceremony and threat in equal measure. The sanctum had transformed, expanding in ways that shouldn't be possible to accommodate hundreds of vampires from across the world. The great hall stretched vast as a cathedral, lit by thousands of candles that burned with silver flame. I stood beside Uriel at the head of the hall, the crimson guard arrayed around us in formal formation. Except Valdis wasn't in his usual position. He'd been assigned to security detail for the event, coordinating defenses in case of attack. His absence felt like a missing tooth, wrong but not quite painful enough to demand immediate attention. The houses began arriving at midnight sharp. House Corvinus entered first, because Constantine would never let anyone else claim precedence. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair going silver at the temples and eyes like chips of obsidian. Ancient power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. Behind him came a dozen vampires in burgundy and black, each looking like they'd been carved from marble and taught to kill. Constantine's gaze found me immediately. His lip curled. "So this is the abomination," he said loud enough to carry. "The half-breed that proves Uriel Lohengrin has forgotten what it means to be vampire." Uriel's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Choose your next words carefully, Constantine. You stand in my court surrounded by my guard. Insult my daughter again and I'll give you the war you've been begging for." Tension crackled between them, centuries of enmity compressed into a single moment. Then Constantine smiled, cold and calculated. "No insult intended, old friend. Merely observation. The conclave will determine what she is. And what she means for all of us." House Nyx arrived next, led by Lady Isadora, a woman who looked barely 30 but carried herself with the authority of ages. She had skin like burnished copper and eyes that missed nothing. Her house colors were silver and black, and she moved with the efficiency of someone who wasted neither time nor energy. "House Lohengrin," she said formally. "We come in peace and curiosity. The hybrid question interests us greatly." At least she didn't call me an abomination. House Drackle came last of the major houses, and their presence felt like a storm front moving through. Lord Dmitri Drackle was ancient even by vampire standards, turned during the original Vlad's reign and still carrying the weight of that bloody heritage. He wore traditional Eastern European formal wear and regarded me with the kind of assessment usually reserved for potential prey. "The blood of Lohengrin," he said in accented English. "Mixed with human weakness. We shall see if the result is strength or poison." The minor houses filed in after. Dozens of them, some barely more than extended families, others with holdings across continents. Each watching, calculating, deciding whether I represented opportunity or threat. When everyone had assembled, Uriel raised his hand for silence. "We gather for the first time in a century because circumstances demand it. My daughter," he emphasized the word, claiming me publicly in front of everyone, "represents something new. A hybrid of vampire and human, born not made. Her existence challenges our assumptions about what we are and what we can become." "Her existence is an insult," Constantine interrupted. "Vampires do not breed with humans. We turn them or feed on them. To create this thing shows weakness." "I created her through love," Uriel said softly, dangerously. "Something you've never understood, Constantine. Your heart died centuries before your body did. Love is a human weakness." Constantine stepped forward. "And this conclave was called to determine if House Lohengrin has become too human to lead. I call for trials. Let the half-breed prove she's worthy of the name she claims." Murmurs rippled through the hall. This was the move Octavia had predicted. Turn the conclave into a trial, make me prove myself or be rejected. Uriel's jaw tightened. Trials are only called when legitimacy is in question. I am her father. My blood bond with her is witnessed and sealed. There is no question. "Then let her prove it," Lady Isadora said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Not because we doubt you, Uriel, but because the world will. The Order. The human governments who barely tolerate our existence. If she's to be crown princess, she must show strength." Dmitri Drackle nodded. "The old ways. 3 trials. Strength, wisdom, sacrifice. She passes, no one can question her legitimacy. If she fails. He shrugged. Then perhaps House Lohengrin has indeed grown weak. I felt Uriel's resistance, his desire to shut this down. But I stepped forward before he could speak. I accept the trials. Uriel turned to me sharply. Ygraine. They're right, I said quietly. I need to prove this. Not for you. For me. Something flickered in his eyes. Pride maybe. Or fear. Very well, he said. Let the trials begin. The trial of strength came first. Lucien Kane stepped forward from the Crimson Guard, that unsettling smile on his face. I'll be your opponent, he said. Someone you've trained with. Someone who knows your capabilities. Seems fair. It wasn't fair. Lucien was over a century old and had been a fighter long before he was turned. But I nodded anyway because refusing would be worse than losing. The combat circle cleared. No weapons, just hand-to-hand until someone yielded or couldn't continue. I stripped off the gown's outer layer, leaving me in fitted pants and a sleeveless top that allowed movement. Lucien attacked the moment the signal sounded. He was fast, faster than anything human. But the blood bond had changed me and I was fast too. I dodged his first strike, countered with a jab that actually connected. Surprise flickered across his face. You've improved, he said. Then he stopped holding back. What followed was 3 minutes of brutal education in exactly how much I still had to learn. Lucien moved like violence given form, each strike precise and devastating. I blocked what I could, dodged the rest, and took hits that would have hospitalized a human. But I didn't go down. The hybrid constitution that had saved me from poison saved me now. Bones that cracked healed in seconds. Breath that was knocked from my lungs returned. I wasn't winning, but I wasn't losing either. And slowly something shifted. The vampire instincts Uriel's blood had awakened started guiding my movements. I stopped thinking and started reacting. Stopped fighting like a human and started fighting like something else. I caught Lucien's wrist mid-strike, twisted, and used his momentum to throw him across the circle. He landed in a crouch, that smile widening. There it is. The predator waking up. We clashed 3 more times before he finally yielded, bowing with genuine respect. She passes, he announced. Strength acknowledged. The trial of wisdom came next, an ancient vampire riddle that Isadora herself posed. A vampire stands at 3 doors. Behind one is sunlight that will destroy them. Behind another is silver that will poison them. Behind the third is a human holding a stake. How do they survive? I thought about it while the assembled vampires watched. Thought about every vampire myth I'd studied, every grimoire I'd catalogued. The answer wasn't about physical survival. They don't, I said finally. Not as what they were. They choose the human, take the stake, and let themselves be destroyed. Because a vampire who fears all their options equally has already lost what makes survival worthwhile. Better to die human than exist as a monster. Silence. Then Dmitri Draco laughed, the sound like grinding stone. She understands, he said. Wisdom is knowing when not to survive. When death is preferable to what you'd become. She passes. The trial of sacrifice was announced by Constantine himself, and I knew immediately it would be the worst. Simple choice, he said. We have someone you care about in custody. Bastian Crow, the damper spy. Release him and you fail the trial, choosing personal desire over house loyalty. Let us execute him as a traitor and you pass. Your choice, hybrid. They brought Bastian out in silver chains. His face was bruised, his scarred arms bearing new wounds. But his eyes found mine with something like apology. Don't, he said. Don't fail because of me. I looked at Constantine. This isn't a trial. It's murder dressed up as politics. It's sacrifice, he countered. What are you willing to lose for power? Choose now. I looked at Bastian. At the man who'd spied on me, fallen in love with me, betrayed the order for me. At someone who'd crossed every line trying to protect me. Execute him, I said, and my voice was steady despite my heart breaking. House loyalty over personal attachment. That's your test, right? Bastian's expression shattered. Behind me I heard Seraphine's sharp intake of breath. Constantine smiled. Finally. Some sense from the half-breed. Very well. But, I continued, stepping forward, I challenge you for custody. Single combat. You win, you execute him. I win, he goes free, and you acknowledge my legitimacy without question. The hall erupted in noise. This wasn't how trials worked. This was acceptable, Constantine said, cutting through the chaos. I'll enjoy breaking you, child. We faced each other in the circle. Constantine was older, stronger, carrying centuries of combat experience. But I was angry now. Angry at the games, at the politics, at watching Bastion hurt because someone wanted to test me. The fight was fast and brutal. Constantine didn't hold back, didn't treat me like someone learning. He treated me like a threat to be eliminated. Which meant I responded like one. I used everything. Speed from the blood bond, instinct from awakening vampire nature, desperation from knowing Bastion's life hung in the balance. I took hits that would kill humans, gave back strikes that made Constantine's ancient bones crack. And when I finally got inside his guard, when my claws found his throat and drew blood old as nations, I whispered, "Yield. Or I show everyone here that you can bleed." He yielded. The hall erupted in shock. I'd won. All 3 trials passed. Then Valdis's voice came through the communication system, strained and wrong. Security breach. Order attack on 3 flanks. All hands to. The transmission cut off. Bastion, still in chains, shouted, "It's a trap. 3-way ambush." I tried to warn. The walls exploded inward. Order forces poured through breaches in 3 locations, synchronized perfectly. Silver bullets tore through vampires. Holy water grenades created zones of caustic death. This wasn't a raid. This was an assault designed to kill everyone in the hall. And from the opposite side, Corvinus' house attacked. Not the Order. Not external enemies. Constantine's own people turning on Uriel in the chaos. Valdis appeared in the doorway to the royal platform, and I saw the truth in his face before he spoke. "I'm sorry, sire," he said to Uriel. "But you've led us into weakness for too long. House Corvinus offered what you couldn't, strength without sentiment." Uriel's expression went beyond rage into something colder. "All this time. Someone had to save us from your human-loving fantasy." Valdis drew his blade. "I gave the Order access to Meredith's grave. I told Corvinus about the hybrid. I've been preparing this moment for 3 years. Then he attacked. What followed was chaos. 3-way battle as loyalists fought Corvinus, rebels fought Order forces in a hall designed for ceremony, not war. The Crimson Guard, those who weren't traitors, formed defensive positions around Uriel and me. Blood slicked the marble floors. Silver burned flesh. Vampires died in ways I'd only read about. I saw Octavia tear through 3 Order agents with her bare hands. Saw Lucian laugh as he killed, joy and horror mixed on his face. Saw Seraphine fighting alongside House Ashcroft members, her elegant gown soaked in blood. Valdis and Uriel fought like titans. Centuries of loyalty turned to centuries of betrayal in a single moment. I moved to help my father, but Order agents blocked my path. Enhanced with vampire blood, carrying silver weapons designed to hurt what I was. I killed them. All of them. My claws found throats. My speed dodged bullets. My hybrid nature kept me alive when I should have died a dozen times over. And when I finally reached Valdis, when I saw him about to deliver a killing blow to Uriel's exposed back, I didn't hesitate. I drove my claws through his spine from behind. He dropped, paralyzed, his ancient eyes finding mine. "You're still weak," he gasped. "Still human." "I'm both," I said. "That's what makes me dangerous." I snapped his neck. Ended centuries of existence with a single movement. Then the world exploded around us. Order reinforcements. Too many. The Crimson Guard was being overwhelmed. "Evacuate!" Uriel shouted. "Everyone out. Now." But during the chaos of retreat I saw it happen. Saw the Order squad separate Uriel from his guard. Saw them hit him with enough silver to drop an ancient vampire. Saw them drag him through a breach in the wall. I tried to follow, but Octavia grabbed me, her strength overwhelming mine. "No. That's what they want. You go after him, they get both of you. I can't just." "You can and you will." She pulled me toward the evacuation portal. "He'd want you safe. That's all that matters." We made it back to the Sanctum's secure area with maybe half the court surviving. The others were dead or scattered or captured. 24 hours later, the message arrived. A video. Uriel chained in silver in what looked like a cathedral dungeon. Burned. Wounded. But alive. And a voice, cultured British, carrying the weight of zealotry. Miss Walker. I am Cassius Thorne, High Inquisitor of the Sanguine Order. We have your father. You have 24 hours to surrender yourself and all hybrid blood samples. After that, we begin dissecting him for our research. Every hour of his screaming will be your fault. Choose wisely. The video ended. I stared at the screen at Uriel's bloody face, and felt something inside me crystallize into absolute clarity. They wanted me to choose between my life and his. They were about to learn I was done making choices they offered. I was going to make my own. You're not seriously considering surrender. Octavia's statement wasn't a question. She stood at the head of the war table, winter eyes assessing the wreckage of the Crimson Guard. We'd lost 4 in the Conclave attack. Valdis dead by my hand. 3 others revealed as traitors. That left 8 of the original 12, plus whatever allies remained loyal after the bloodbath. I'm not surrendering, I said. I'm going to get him back. It's suicide. This from one of the remaining guard, a vampire named Gregor. Not the assassin, a different Gregor, who'd been with Uriel for a century. The cathedral is designed to withstand vampire assault. Silver-laced walls. Holy water in the ventilation. UV lights on motion sensors. They've spent 800 years preparing for us. Then we don't assault it like vampires. I looked at Bastion, who'd been freed from his chains and was now sitting at the table despite the hostile stares. We assault it like someone who knows every vulnerability. Someone who helped design their current security protocols. Bastion met my gaze. You want me to get you inside. I want you to get all of us inside. Fast and quiet. Before they know we're coming. They'll be expecting exactly that, Octavia said. Thorne knows Bastion defected. He'll have changed protocols. Not all of them. Bastion leaned forward, pulling up schematics on the tablet in front of him. Some things you can't change without rebuilding the entire structure. Load-bearing walls. Drainage systems. The crypt level beneath the cathedral that predates the Order by 3 centuries. He traced a path with his finger. Here. Old Smuggler's Tunnel from Prohibition. Connects to the city sewers which connect to the cathedral drainage. It's warded, but the wards are designed to detect vampire signatures. Not hybrid. Not damper. So you and I go in first, I said. Disable the wards. Let the others follow. That's insane, Octavia said. That's our only option. Seraphine appeared in the doorway, looking remarkably composed for someone who'd killed dozens of people 12 hours ago. The conventional approach fails. The suicide approach at least has the advantage of surprise. She moved to stand beside me, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. Besides, you think I spent months courting you to lose you now? Where you go, House Ashcroft goes. We're either all suicidally brave or all magnificently stupid together. I looked around the table. 8 Crimson Guard. Seraphine and 3 of her house vampires. Bastion. 15 total to assault a cathedral stronghold designed to kill our kind. This is likely to be a one-way trip, I said quietly. If anyone wants out, now's the time. No one moved. Lucien smiled that unsettling smile. Death or glory? I'm bored of immortality anyway. We left at dusk the next day, hours before Thorne's deadline. A convoy of 3 black vehicles racing through Louisiana backroads, staying off major highways where Order surveillance might spot us. I rode in the lead vehicle with Bastion and Octavia, watching the landscape blur past. Tell me about Cassius Thorne, I said to Bastion. He was quiet for a moment. High Inquisitor for 20 years. Before that he was a field commander. Rose through the ranks through a combination of brilliance and brutality. He's the one who developed most of their anti-vampire technology. UV grenades. Silver-laced bullets. The containment systems they use for captured supernaturals. You sound like you admire him. I did. Before I understood what he really was. Bastion's scarred hands tightened on the steering wheel. The Order isn't what it claims, Ygraine. Started as monster hunters, sure. But somewhere along the way they became what they hunted. They don't just kill supernaturals now. They traffic them. Sell vampire blood to the wealthy. Rent out captured shifters for illegal fighting rings. Thorne knows. He profits from it. And my mother discovered this. She was about to expose everything. That's why they killed her. The cathedral rose from Baton Rouge's outskirts like a monument to faith-turned fanaticism. Gothic revival architecture, all pointed arches and flying buttresses, looking exactly like what it was. A fortress disguised as a house of worship. Floodlights illuminated the grounds. Armed patrols moved in coordinated patterns. This was military installation, not church. We parked 2 blocks away in an abandoned warehouse. Bastion led me through back alleys to a storm drain that looked like every other storm drain in Louisiana. Rusted grate, stagnant water, the smell of decay. "This is the glamorous rescue operation," he said, pulling up the grate. "Hope you didn't like that outfit." I'd changed into tactical gear Octavia had provided. All black, flexible, designed to move. I dropped into the tunnel without hesitation, landing in water that came up to my knees. Bastion followed, then we moved in darkness that my vampire vision cut through easily. The smuggler's tunnel was exactly where he'd said it would be. Ancient brick, pre-war construction, wide enough for 2 people walking side by side. We followed it in silence, every sense hyper-alert for traps or sensors. The wards hit at the quarter-mile mark, invisible pressure against my skin trying to detect what I was. I felt them probe, assess, then slide off confused. Not vampire enough to trigger. Not human enough to ignore. The hybrid nature that made me vulnerable also made me invisible to their oldest defenses. I disabled them manually, following Bastion's instructions to cut specific wires in specific sequences. Within 10 minutes, the path was clear. I texted Octavia. "Clear. Come now." The Crimson Guard and Seraphine's people infiltrated within 20 minutes. 15 vampires in the heart of the Order's stronghold and no alarms yet. "This way," Bastion whispered, leading us through maintenance tunnels that smelled of mildew and old death. "Torture chambers are on the lowest level. That's where they'll have Uriel." We encountered the first patrol near the entrance to the lower level. 6 Order soldiers in tactical gear, armed with silver weapons and UV flashlights. They died before they could raise the alarm. The Crimson Guard moved like whispers of violence, throats torn, weapons scattered. I participated, my claws finding flesh, and felt nothing but grim satisfaction. I was past horror now. Past guilt. There was only the mission. The lower level opened up into something from a nightmare. Cells lined the walls, each containing captured supernatural beings. Vampires in silver chains. Shifters in wolfsbane cages. Something with wings I couldn't identify, too broken to fly. Dozens of prisoners, maybe hundreds, all being held by an organization that claimed to protect humanity from monsters. "Jesus Christ," Seraphine whispered. "Document everything," I said. "We burn this place down, but first we get proof." We found Uriel in the central chamber, a circular room designed for maximum suffering. He hung from silver chains suspended from the ceiling, burned and bleeding from dozens of wounds. Holy water scars marked his chest. But what made my breath catch were the devices. Syringes filled with dark red liquid for bags connected to his veins, extracting blood even as they pumped something else in. "Meredith's blood," Bastion said, his voice tight. "They're using your mother's hybrid blood to torture him, making his body fight itself." Uriel's eyes opened, golden and filled with pain. "Ygraine, you shouldn't have come." "Shut up." I was already at the chains, pulling them apart with strength I didn't know I possessed. "We're leaving. All of us." "Touching," a voice said from the doorway. "The monster's daughter rescues the monster." Very heroic. Cassius Thorne stepped into the light and my world tilted. He looked like my mother. Older, masculine, weathered by time and zealotry. But the bone structure was identical. The eyes were identical. Even the way he held his head, that slight tilt when assessing something, was exactly Meredith's habit. "Hello, niece," he said softly. "I'm your Uncle Cassius. Your mother was my sister." The Crimson Guard moved to attack, but I held up a hand. "No. Everyone get Uriel to safety. This one is mine." "Ygraine," Octavia started. "Go." The command came out layered with power I didn't know I could project. The blood bond had changed me more than I'd realized. They went, carrying Uriel's weakened form, leaving me alone with the man who'd killed my mother. "She spoke of you," I said. "In her journals. The brother she lost to the Order." The family that rejected her for loving what they hunted. I didn't reject her. Cassius circled me slowly, predatory and calculating. I tried to save her. From him. From that corruption wearing a beautiful face. I watched my sister fall in love with a monster and I couldn't stop it. So you killed her. I gave her mercy. His voice carried absolute conviction. She was transforming. Becoming what he was. I ended it before the transformation completed. Saved her soul before damnation claimed it. You're insane. I'm faithful. He moved faster than any human should, enhanced speed from vampire blood, and suddenly we were fighting. I've spent my life studying monsters, learning their strengths, taking their power to use against them. You think you're special because you were born hybrid? I made myself into one. Stronger. Better. Without the weakness of divided loyalty. He was right. He was fast, enhanced, carrying weapons designed specifically to hurt what I was. Silver-edged knives that cut deeper than they should. A collar that released UV light impulses burning my skin. But I was angry. Angrier than I'd ever been. This man had killed my mother, tortured my father, and called it holy work. We fought through the torture chamber, then out into the corridors. The cathedral erupted in alarm sirens. Order forces converging. The Crimson Guard fighting running battles on multiple levels. You're just like her, Cassius said as we grappled, his knife scoring a line across my ribs. So certain you're right. So sure that love conquers all. I'll enjoy proving you wrong before I dissect you for science. You're not doing this for humanity, I gasped, dodging his next strike. You're doing this because you can't accept that your sister chose her own path. That she loved someone you deemed unworthy. This is about control. This is about purity. He slammed me against a wall. You're an abomination. Proof that I failed to save her. But I can still cleanse her bloodline. Can still destroy what she created. She created me out of love. You created nothing but suffering. I broke his hold, drove my claws into his shoulder. He screamed and I smelled it. Vampire blood mixed with human. He'd taken so much supernatural enhancement that he was becoming what he claimed to hate. Hypocrite, I whispered. You're already half vampire. You just won't admit it. His face twisted with rage. I'm nothing like you. I'm purified by purpose. Enhanced to destroy evil. You're just a monster pretending to be human. No, I said. I'm both. And that's what you can't stand. The battle raged through the cathedral. I caught glimpses. Lucien laughing as he fought 3 Order soldiers. Seraphine moving like liquid death. Bastion confronting his former commander, choosing permanently which side he stood on. And in the central sanctuary I saw it, the virus containment. Dozens of vials filled with hybrid blood, my mother's and samples they'd stolen from me during the Conclave attack. The genocide weapon ready for deployment. You can't stop it, Cassius said, following my gaze. Even if you kill me. Even if you destroy this facility. The Order has bases across the world. We'll rebuild. We always rebuild. And eventually we'll cleanse the earth of your kind. Not if there's nothing left to replicate. I ran for the containment. Cassius tried to stop me, but Octavia appeared from nowhere, intercepting him with the fury of a winter storm. I reached the vault. Began smashing vials. Blood sprayed across my hands, my face, the floor. Decades of collected samples destroyed in seconds. Then I felt it. The attack coming from behind. Cassius had broken free from Octavia, had lined up a shot with some kind of railgun designed to punch through vampire flesh. I started to turn, knowing I wouldn't be fast enough. Bastion appeared between us. The shot took him center mass, punching through his chest and out his back. He collapsed into my arms, blood pouring from a wound no damper could heal. No, I whispered. No, you don't get to do this. Got to die for something real, he gasped. His scarred hands found my face. Loved you, from the first surveillance photo. Never told you, thought I had time. Bastion, please. Kill him. Blood bubbled on his lips. For her. For Meredith. For us. He died in my arms. Died choosing my side. Died proving love was real even in a world of monsters and lies. I laid him down gently. Said, turned to face Cassius Thorne. And let the monster out. I could kill him. Every instinct screamed for it. Vampire rage, human grief, hybrid fury, all demanding blood for blood. Cassius Thorne knelt before me, his railgun empty, his enhancements failing as the vampire blood in his system warred with his human cells. He was dying already, poisoned by the very power he'd stolen to destroy us. My claws were at his throat. One movement and it would be over. "Do it," he whispered. "Prove me right. Prove you're the monster I always knew you were." I looked at Bastion's body. At the man who'd died proving love was real. Who'd chosen mercy over mission, humanity over hate. "No," I said and lowered my hand. "You don't get to make me into what you believe I am." I turned to find Octavia watching, covered in blood that wasn't hers. "There are moderate order members, right? People who actually believe in protecting humanity instead of profiting from suffering." "Commander Helena Voss," Octavia said. "She's been quietly fighting corruption for years. Cassius kept her around because she was brilliant, but she's everything he isn't, honorable. Find her. Tell her the High Inquisitor is hers to arrest. Tell her we have evidence of everything, the trafficking, the corruption, the genocide weapon. Tell her we want peace, not war." Cassius laughed, the sound wet with blood. "You think they'll accept you? Trust you? You're still a monster, niece. Mercy doesn't change that." "Maybe," I said. "But it's a start." I left him there and went to destroy what remained of the virus. The last vials glowed in the dim light, filled with my mother's blood stolen from her corpse, weaponized to kill thousands. I picked up the final one, held it up to the light. "My mother's blood is not a weapon," I said to the empty room, to the ghosts of the dead, to whatever part of Meredith Walker still lingered in this cursed place. It was love made real. Life created between worlds. This ends now. I crushed the vial in my hand, let the hybrid blood run between my fingers and drip onto the floor. The genocide weapon destroyed. The cycle broken. Then I went to free the prisoners. The cells opened to reveal horrors I'd only read about in sanitized reports. Vampires who'd been held for decades, drained repeatedly for their blood. Shifters broken by silver and wolfsbane. Fae whose wings had been clipped, whose magic had been harvested. Dozens of supernatural beings treated like resources instead of people. "You're free," I told them, my voice carrying through the dungeons. "All of you. The order that did this is finished. We're taking you home." It took hours. Some prisoners were too weak to walk. Others were too traumatized to trust. But slowly, with the help of the Crimson Guard and Seraphine's people, we evacuated everyone. Led them up through the tunnels to safety while the cathedral burned behind us. Not with fire but with evidence. Commander Helena Voss arrived with a contingent of Order members who actually looked like they gave a damn about justice. She was in her 50s, steel-haired and steel-eyed, and when she saw the prisoner cells, when she reviewed the financial records we'd recovered, something broke and reformed in her expression. "How long?" she asked me. "The trafficking? At least 30 years. Maybe longer." And Thorne knew. Thorne orchestrated. I met her gaze. My mother died trying to expose this. Her journals have everything. Names, dates, transactions. I'll give you copies. All I ask is that you actually use them. You have my word. She paused. The Order was founded to protect humanity from supernatural threats. Real threats. Not to become monsters ourselves. I'll fix this. Even if I have to burn down 800 years of corruption to do it. Then we'll help you burn it. The treaty negotiations took weeks. Vampire houses and the Reformed Order, meeting in neutral territory, hammering out terms that acknowledged both sides had committed atrocities. Both sides had work to do. The final document was simple. Vampires would police their own, humans would police theirs, and cases that crossed boundaries would be handled jointly. Ygraine Lohengrin Walker would serve as primary liaison. Bridge between worlds. Living proof that coexistence was possible. I spent the first month mostly at Uriel's bedside. The torture had nearly killed him, would have killed anyone less ancient. He healed slowly, painfully, his body fighting the hybrid blood they'd forced into his system. But he healed. "You saved me," he said one evening, his voice still rough from screaming. "Came into that hell and brought me home. You'd have done the same for me. In a heartbeat." He reached for my hand, squeezed gently. "You became what neither of us could be alone. Something new, something better. Your mother would be so proud. I wish she could see this. See what we're building." "She can." He smiled, tired but genuine. "I believe that. have to believe it, or what was it all for? The vampire political restructuring happened swiftly once Uriel was well enough to convene the court. House Corvinus was stripped of holdings and titles, absorbed into Lohengrin as punishment for Constantine's coup attempt. The minor houses that had supported him were sanctioned. The message was clear: attempted assassination of the Crimson Crown would not be tolerated. And I was named Crown Princess officially. Not just acknowledged as Uriel's daughter, but designated his heir. The vote wasn't unanimous. Nothing ever was in vampire politics, but it was decisive enough. "You'll modernize us," Uriel said during my coronation ceremony. "Drag us into the 21st century whether we like it or not. Create accountability where there's been only power." "Someone has to," I said. Seraphine was there, of course, standing beside me in a gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Our relationship had evolved from political attraction to something more complex, built on honesty about power and affection in equal measure. She wanted what I represented politically, yes. But she also wanted me. And I found I wanted her too, in ways that surprised me. "You know, I'm still using you for political advancement," she murmured during the reception. "I know. And you're still using me for alliance with House Ashcroft." "Obviously." She smiled. "Good. Glad we're clear." She kissed me in front of half the court, staking her claim publicly. "Now let's go scandalize some traditionalists." We held a private funeral for Bastian 3 days after the cathedral. Just the Crimson Guard, Seraphine, and me, in a clearing outside the sanctum where moonlight filtered through ancient trees. We burned his body on a pyre the old way, and I spoke the words I wished I'd said while he lived. He was a spy. A traitor. A stalker who watched me for 2 years before we met. And he died a hero, choosing love over loyalty, humanity over mission. He deserves to be remembered for what he became, not what he was. I added his name to Uriel's sword, the blade inscribed with fallen warriors across centuries. Bastian Crow joined them. A damper who'd proved that redemption was real. 6 months later, New Orleans had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The supernatural world operated more openly now, under strict rules that the Reformed Order actually enforced fairly. Vampire feeding was regulated, voluntary donors, medical oversight, consequences for violations. Shifters had legal protections. Fae could practice magic without fear of being harvested. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever would be. But it was better. I split my time between the bookshop and the court. Blackthorn Books reopened with a new section on verified supernatural studies, grimoires and manuscripts that weren't just academic curiosities anymore but actual reference materials. Students from the new supernatural studies programs visited regularly. I'd become an accidental educator, bridging scholarly understanding with lived reality. And at night I ruled. Or learned to rule, with Uriel's guidance and the Crimson Guard's support. Crown Princess of House Lohengrin, modernizing vampire law one reform at a time. Creating systems of accountability that the old houses resented but couldn't fight without looking tyrannical. Seraphine moved through both worlds with me, equally comfortable negotiating trade agreements and recommending rare manuscripts to bookshop customers. Our relationship was public now, stable, built on mutual benefit and genuine affection that had grown into something deeper. "You know," she said one evening as we closed the shop, "I actually love you. Not just politically. Actually." "I know," I said. "I love you too. Actually." How terribly inconvenient for both of us. Extremely. She kissed me there among the ancient books, surrounded by centuries of collected wisdom, and it felt like coming home. October 31st arrived again, 1 year after everything changed. I stood at my mother's grave as midnight approached, but I wasn't alone this time. Uriel stood beside me, healed but carrying scars that would never fully fade. The Crimson Guard formed their circle, though the formation was different now. 8 instead of 12, gaps where Valdis and the others had stood. But we weren't the only ones present. Representatives from every supernatural community had come. Shifter packs. Fae courts. Even Reformed Order members, led by Commander Voss, standing vigil in harmony with the beings they'd once hunted. The ritual had evolved. Not just vampires paying respect to a human who'd loved their king, but all supernatural beings honoring the woman who'd tried to bridge worlds with truth. Uriel knelt before the grave as he had 1 year ago, that same sword point down in the earth. But his words were different now. Your sacrifice bore fruit beyond imagining, beloved, he said softly. Our daughter has done what we could not, united worlds we kept divided. Built peace from the ashes of war. Proved that love transcends blood, species, the false divisions we erected between human and other. He looked up at me. She carries your courage and my power. Your wisdom and my strength. She's everything we hoped and more than we imagined. I knelt beside him, placed my hand on the sword's pommel. The blade was heavier now, inscribed with new names. Meredith Walker. Bastion Crow. Even Valdis Rook. Enemy honored because he'd believed he was protecting what he loved, twisted though his methods were. I add my own oath, I said, cutting my palm and letting hybrid blood fall on the blade. To protect both worlds. To honor all legacies, human and vampire, living and dead. To forge new paths where old ones only led to suffering. The blood absorbed into the metal, my name joining the centuries of warriors who'd sworn and died and been remembered. I'm not human or vampire, I continued. I'm Ygraine Lohengrin Walker. Both surnames, both heritages. Both halves making me whole. We stood together, father and daughter, king and heir, as silver flames burned around the grave. The gathered supernatural beings bowed their heads in respect. Order members stood at attention. Centuries of hate and fear transformed, slowly, into something like hope. Seraphine took my hand as we prepared to leave, the Crimson Guard falling into formation around us. You know this won't last forever, she said quietly. Peace is fragile. There will be challenges. I know. And you're ready for them? I looked back once at my mother's grave. Saw, or imagined I saw, a figure standing there, translucent in the moonlight, smiling with pride and approval. Meredith Walker, watching her daughter become what she died protecting. Thank you, Mother, I whispered, for protecting me long enough to become this. The figure nodded once, then faded like morning mist. I'm ready, I said to Seraphine, to the future, to whatever came next. The crimson overcoats disappeared into New Orleans night, 12 shadows. No 8, but 8 was enough, protecting a future their king had helped create. Behind us, silver flames burned eternal at Meredith Walker's grave, tribute to the human who loved a vampire, to the spy who chose redemption, to all who died proving that monsters could become heroes and heroes could acknowledge their monstrosity. And at the center of it all I walked forward, Crown Princess, bookshop owner, bridge between worlds. Neither fully human nor fully vampire. Both. Always both. The debt was paid. The cycle broken. The future unwritten but no longer constrained by the past's false divisions. Love had transcended blood after all. Just as my mother always believed it would. Thank you for watching. We hope you sure enjoyed it. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, like the video, and tell me where you are watching from. Also click on the image on your screen to watch more beautiful, heartwarming stories and stay updated with our latest content.